All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this one-of-a-kind event where you guys get to meet the campus recruiters and leaders from conglomerates even before they visit you for the summers. Historically, this might have happened in a cool, swanky-looking cafe, where you would have tasted some amazing food and get to ask questions in person to these people. But sadly, it's history now, at least for a couple of years it is. But we haven't stopped, and neither have you. You have joined us in huge numbers today. So I thank all of you for coming in here to solve your queries and doubts and get some help in return from this conversation. Today, as a lot of you might know, I have with me four young leaders whose videos you have watched on our channel. I have Vishwanath Padmanabhan, who is the Global Sector Head Tires at Birla Carbon. I also have Shruti Agarwal, and I am Calcutta alumni, who is the GM Head of Marketing and E-Commerce at Jayashree Textiles. We have Ishan Khare, the AVP Digital Marketing, Martech and Analytics at Aditya Birla Capital, and Kritika Jain, who is the lead HRBP at the Aditya Birla Housing Finance Limited. And so that you can ask questions about how you can impress people within ABG to get in, we have Soma Banik as well. Soma is the campus recruitment engagement and branding lead. Welcome all of you, and I'm really looking forward to having a cracking session today, which can help these students who are still joining in, you can see, get some perspective about life and the roles they can have at ABG. I would request all of you to introduce yourselves briefly before we start, to our audiences, and set the course for the day as to what they should expect from this conversation today. We'll start with you, Vishy. Why don't you go first?
All right, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vishy. I'm the Global Sector Head for Tires at Birla Carbon, as Paul mentioned. I've worked with Birla Carbon for 13 years and 16 years with the ABG Group overall. Worked in different capacities and roles across India, Egypt, Turkey, before moving to Germany, where I'm currently based. I'm excited to be here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Lovely, great. Shruti, why don't you go next?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be connected with all of you today. I'm Shruti Agarwal. I've been with the group for around 11 years now. In fact, the Aditya group is the only place I've ever worked. I interned with the group, got a PPO, and have been with the group since 2010. So look forward to interact with all of you today.
Lovely. Next, we'll have Ishan. Ishan, why don't you tell us a little bit about about your journey so that you set the context for the day.
Hello everyone. I'm Ishan. I'm leading the digital marketing function for Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance now, and I've worked with Chairman Cell, Telecom, textiles, and then metals as well. What I expect from the session is that I would really want to talk to 5-6 years younger self, and actually just try and attempt those questions that even I had when I was in your place. So just looking forward to this. Yeah.
Right. Moving next to the HR people, Kritika, why don't you go next and tell us a bit about your agenda list today?
Hi, everyone. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be in the session today. I'm Kritika Jain, and I've been with the group for about 7 years. Started my journey as an HRLP with the group and done various stints across the group. Working with businesses like Ultratech Cement, Novelis. Now, currently, the role that I'm playing is of a lead HR business partner with the housing finance business like Aditya Birla Capital. So one of the things that I'm looking forward in this session is actually talking to all the youngsters here, whereas we all are also a young cohort, but as to how things have changed across on campus, and just to understand what are the questions that are coming in these days. So yeah, looking forward to interact with all of you.
Great, lovely. Shoma, as I mentioned earlier, also a lot of these students, they might really want to know some tips and tricks to get into ABG. So are you going to help them today?
Hey, thanks, Paul, for the introduction. Thank you, panel members, for joining us today. Hi, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. And thank you so much for taking time out on a Saturday morning. I'm sure all of us love sleeping till late. So whoever is on call today, all the 3,000 plus participants that I'm able to see, we all have a reason to be here today. And we hope to, help you, understand some of your B school queries, worries, concerns through this call today. So I, as Paul mentioned, lead the campus hiring, engagement, and employer branding for the Aditya Birla Group leadership programs. And with me, I have my colleague Arva today as well. So we are a part of the young talent management team at the Aditya Birla Group HR. That's a dedicated team which basically hires, onboards, manages, rewards, careers, etc. for the group leadership participants. So that's pretty much about us. Just to give you a quick context for today, this call is not really a call to, ask you to join ABG. This is more from a perspective, building session, I would say. Our panelists today, who are all ABG-LP leaders, I'm sure will help you transition into that journey and make your, your way forward life, the 2-year campus journey that you are about to embark on, a little bit more easier. I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to basically understand organizations, the way they function a little better today. So honestly, if I was a B school graduate like you, I would have just plugged in my earpods today and listened to this more like a podcast. So that's really the objective for today: listening and understanding organizations a little bit better, a little more before you go into your summer placement season. I know some of you who have joined are also from second year. This particular session primarily is for the first yearites, but I'm sure the second years will also have a share of their key takeaways from this. So stay tuned, guys, and enjoy the show. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Shoma, for setting course for what they can expect today. And we are going to straight jump into a lot of questions that we have received. We have received over 1,000 questions, and they're still coming in. I feel there are more and more questions every minute. That's the kind of reach we have had. That's the kind of people queries that we have, and we will try and solve some of them. To whoever is watching this, I would like to mention that if your question is not covered in the school session, you can ask these questions live. Also, someone from our team will pick those questions up and we'll throw them at the panel that we have today. Shruti, without wasting any more time, I'll go straight to you. The first question coming in from Kashish Jindal, she's from IIM Indore. The question goes like, what kind of opportunities does ABG offer to B school students, and how does ABG expect sales and marketing to evolve past the pandemic? So there are two questions bunched in together.
Thanks, Kashish, for the question. So in terms of opportunities that ABG offers, really at Aditya Birla Group, we say that we are a world of opportunities. So it's not really about the opportunities we offer, it's the opportunities that an individual wants to take up. As a global conglomerate at Aditya Birla Group, you have an opportunity across multiple sectors, multiple functions, multiple geographies. In my own experience in 11 years, I have moved 4 roles now. So this is my 4th role across 2 businesses. So I think it's about the opportunities one wants to seek and the risks one wants to take as one goes along. At least in my experience in the group, I've seen that the group encourages you to try out new opportunities, explore new roles, and understand where your experiences and where your passions and where your strengths would lie. So from an opportunity perspective, if you look at the Aditya Birla Group, it's a canvas of really a multiple choices that you can sort of explore and take up. In terms of how sales and marketing has evolved post the pandemic, I think fundamentals would always remain the same, which is giving a product or a solution that fulfills something for the consumer. It is how that product or solution is getting delivered to the consumer or to the value chain partners or to the customers that has got significantly evolved and is evolving post the pandemic. So how we converse with our consumers, how we engage with them on a day-to-day basis, how we look at go-to-market and last mile fulfillment, all of that, of course, is seeing a sea change. Digital is coming in at every step of the consumer customer journey. And therefore, in terms of how we adapt and adopt to those changes, there is some sort of challenge at every part of the consumer journey today.
Right, and there's a connected question to that, Shruti, as well. Shakshi Jha from Mica, she has asked a question saying that, what has been the impact on various categories of retail sales, because you're handling, affairs related to retail sales for a long time now, and you have that expertise. And how can physical retail stores cater to shift from out-of-home consumption to in-home consumption? Something that we all have seen, throughout this 1.5 year period that we've experienced.
Thanks, Sakshi, for the question. Very rightly, and as one would imagine, retail sales during both phases of the pandemic in India, phase 1 and phase 2, has seen a significant slowdown. Last year, that slowdown was for a slightly more elongated period of time. This year, the slowdown was primarily in May. But what we've equally seen is consumers bouncing back and coming back to shop. I wouldn't really call it revenge shopping, but there's been some need that the consumers have come in for once the lockdowns have sort of eased out. So just to give you a perspective, last year, H2 for us in retail was better than H2 the previous year. So FY21, actually, we were able to get to 100% plus recovery. However, that's been possible through multiple initiatives that we've taken, and that's, I think, the follow-up question that I heard, wherein physical retail is supported by multiple digital initiatives to be able to serve consumers at home. So we are no longer asking consumers to necessarily walk into the store, while of course that always would be for us in the near future, at least, the biggest chunk of our sales. But we're also looking at how we can service them from their homes. So how can we look at e-commerce? How can we look at Omni, WhatsApp-enabled sales, in-home deliveries, appointments at home? So there are various business models that have evolved during the pandemic. And honestly, some of these were conversations that were happening pre-COVID as well. It's just that the COVID has accelerated them and made them a reality today.
Absolutely. And Vishy, taking cue from what Shruti was saying right now, according to you, what are the key factors that somebody should consider before diversifying a business? Some people say that the businesses under a single umbrella must be interconnected one or the other way, and some others dare to expand their businesses to a fairly unrelated sector and succeed as well. This is a question from Srinandan Rao from IFT Kolkata. If you can address it, how somebody can have their take on the same.
Sure. Thank you, Srinandan. I think the first step is to take a stock of the economic environment around you and possible future mega trends, whether it be things like climate change or digitization. Look at growth projections for some of those sectors and data points around that. The next step is to run a SWOT, see if there are inherent core competencies to leverage. If yes, then good. Otherwise, the choice is between either developing or acquiring such competencies for diversifying into other businesses or sectors. The concept of synergy is real and it has a quantifiable value. I think the question that businesses need to ask is this the best use of our time and resources? Possibly why businesses under a single umbrella tend to be interconnected. The underlying goal, however, is to improve shareholder value while making a positive impact on the environment. That said, if there is a strong business case, even in an unrelated sector, I would consider it, but it's probably less likely.
Right. And those who don't know, Vishwanath currently is sitting in Germany. I don't know what time it is, Vishwanath. Is it too early in the morning?
Yeah, it is early for a weekend, but glad to be here.
Lovely. Vishwanath, I also have another question that I want to ask along with this one. MBI Gurgaon student Aishwarya Vashani has asked this question that Aditya Birla Group has been at the forefront of research and development initiatives to deliver innovative and sustainable solutions to the world. Over the years, it has achieved several patents for its unique propositions and continuously seeks advancements in products and processes. How do you perceive the company stands today in terms of research and innovation compared to where you thought it would be 5 years ago?
Thank you, Aishwarya. I would agree. I think one of the main reasons for the success of ABG as a group is the ability to move with the times and reinvent itself. Within our business, that is Birla Carbon, I see at least 3 to 4 new product domains beyond carbon black that we are looking at. And so between 5 years ago and now, I think the pace of change is higher. The way we define terms like midterm and long term has now changed. It's much faster and shorter. In terms of projects, I think there is an increased focus on sustainability beyond meeting regulatory requirements, while the overall core values and the need for financial viability, they remain constant.
Right. We will next move to somebody who has joined this organization 7 or 8 years back. We had a gala time speaking about certain things, Kritika, that you experienced within your journey. Now it's time for us to, divulge some more details to students. Param Naresh Kumar Mehta from XLRI Jamshedpur is asking, with the advent of hybrid model of working, which is, by the way, in the minds of a lot of these students who have asked this question, how does ABG measure impact on employee efficiency or productivity? How does ABG strategize to adapt to the employee expectations in a dynamic business environment accordingly?
That's a great question, Param. Thanks for asking that. Firstly, it is all about identifying the kind of roles that are existing in an organization. Definitely, these unprecedented times have made all of us thinking. Nobody was prepared for it. Nobody knew that how the entire working landscape is going to change going forward. But eventually, there is a realization. Eventually, everybody had to, it was like within couple of days we have to shift our entire machinery to work from home. There are only not hybrid roles that are coming up, but there are also roles identified which can be completely work from home. So I think that was something, a massive exercise that as a group that was carried out, and also a lot of organizations are doing this. It is actually identifying that categorizing your roles into 3 different areas. You will have complete work from home roles. Second would be those hybrid roles where you may be required to come say 2 or 3 times in a week to office. And third is a complete retail kind of a role where you have to be on the field and do that. But when we talk about once the organization has clarity on the kind of categorization they've done, that is when you know that okay, this is the cohort which is actually going to work from home, and how do I improve their efficiency. In the last 1 year under this COVID situation, everybody has been working from home, and personally what I felt is that for us efficiency was never a problem, and neither a productivity, at least for roles which were work from home or hybrid. The KRAs are already set in a way that whether you're in office or at home, at least you're able to do those basic work that is need to be carried out. Yes, what was missing was those interactions which could have happened in person, those meetings that could have happened in person, or those trips that you would make for branch visits, etc. However, couple of things that helped in keeping the productivity and efficiency for everybody was it is very important to ensure that firstly employees are given that complete setup, which is the basic hygiene thing, operational wise, no issues, because you cannot run back to an IT team for a laptop issue, etc. So those are like small operational issues. Second part is that how we are thinning the line that was actually blurring when we started working from home. You might have calls at 8 in the night or even 7, cutting that off. and actually working through the work timings that were there, and also being sensitive to what other family members were going through, because you were doing a dual role right now. To improve the efficiency and productivity, I think the travel time what employees were able to actually curtail, we saw that a lot of it actually went into people having Monday morning meetings. And the morning meetings became very prevalent, because towards the end they wanted to also manage their household chores. So I think for us, productivity and efficiency wasn't an issue for the roles that were defined in these categorization. But yes, how do you measure the efficiency of a person who's supposed to be at a field? I think this was the time for us where we realized that this is very important to upskill them. It is very important to make them learn and unlearn few things. And we invested a lot of time on that. And now today, when they're back up at the ground and hitting, they really know well how a credit manager is underwriting a file, when I speak in a housing finance term. So I think we pretty well managed it this way. Yeah.
Right. Kritika, something related to this, you talked about a certain aspects which are very vital when somebody is, working in an organization. The other factor being the motivation. You said that traveling was not allowed, people were stuck in their houses. At this point in time, as an HRBP, how did you motivate your team? What were the sort of challenges that you got? And how did you grow and develop as a leader? This is a question from Sneha Prakash. If you can just address that.
Sure. So one of the mantras I can say that has always worked for me is always share relevant information with the team, so that they know and they can appreciate and understand why is it that a certain decision is happening, why is it that a certain action is being taken. And these were times, I would not only say it was during these times, it is generally when you're at a workplace or in a professional setup. Why is it that could lead to conflicts and obstacles? Because most, to my experience, what I have realized is most of the conflicts arises when there is not much of clarity provided, or things are left to individual to speculate. And today the work environment has really changed. Everybody is ideating, everybody has a voice, everybody has an opinion. And the idea is, how do you respect those opinions? How do you kind of make it a part of your discussion? And that's when a fruitful, interaction happens. I think it is more about sharing openly. Yes, it's everything needs to be linked in the end to a business strategy. And how is it that HR is supporting that business strategy? Those goals have to be very clear. I think once that clarity is there and that dissemination of information is happening, the possibility of having conflicts and obstacles reduces. I would not say it goes away, but at least it reduces. Second thing is, sorry, I'll just add one more point here. I think apart from this, it is also about, continuing to grow and developing as a leader, because you're also molding yourself and handling those conflicts and ensuring that your leadership skills are also getting enhanced.
Lovely. So now we'll move to the youngest member in this panel. Ishan here has been working for over 5 years now. Ishan?
Yeah.
Right. So Ishan, how has COVID impacted business at your end? You're working with the ABC. You'll be able to tell us better as to how the industry worked and how you saw the differences. And how do you expect upcoming managers to change and adapt to overcome scenarios like a pandemic? As Kritika was mentioning, there were certain factors that you should keep in mind when you're roping in such a situation. This is a question coming in from Vibha Karnath. She's from Excel Reg Jamshedpur. Yeah.
Thanks, Vibha, for the question. And I think Kritika has pretty much answered, most of it. And I would just continue from what just Kritika mentioned about, I think the key, so maybe I'll just answer the first part. So how has the business been impacted? So I'm working with insurance right now, and we are seeing a very positive trend as of now, because this pandemic has actually instilled that thought amongst people. They are now more conscious about their health. They are more conscious about, the money they're spending, and definitely the life, right? So there is a definite positive shift. The moment Kritika mentions, right, that in the span of days, the digital transformations happen, so the entire company, shifted from a working from office to a working from home environment. And I think that was what really mattered, how quickly we can adapt to, the changing environment, how quickly are we able to understand the customer needs? I think these were the two biggest aspects. And I wouldn't say, it is just for the financial industries or anything like that. Every company which can fit in these two things, right? How quick and agile they were. I think they were really able to work across the pandemic. For the managers, I think the key aspect is the resilience. How quickly, how strong you are in these difficult times. How quickly can you unlearn and relearn the stuff, right? So I think again, the point which we talked about earlier. So these are the key aspects which are to be taken care of, and I think leaders are there to do this, right? So
right, Ishan. It's important to know how a person grows in an organization before they decide that I want to be in there. Your domain as an individual, how much of a learning opportunity and growth prospect you have received so far within the organization? There's a question coming in from Hira Bhandari, etc. Delhi.
Hi, Hira. So I think ABG, I think we everywhere say it's the world of opportunity. It truly is. And again, as Shruti mentioned, right, it's what all opportunities you can create yourself. That matters the most. So there is definitely a platform available. I mentioned earlier that you are the CEO of your own career, right? So it's all about you, and you will definitely get those bouquet of opportunities present across ABG. We are present across businesses. So people are ready to take bet on you. And I'll just keep it that simple. People are ready to take that bet on you. And if you are passionate, if you're going to, if you are ready to do that extra mile, right? So the growth charts are, you can see the trends. Maybe what ABGLT keeps publishing. The growth prospects are really, really nice over here.
Absolutely. Shruti, we'll move back to you. We have been keeping you waiting for a long time now, taking all the questions possible, and we will take more questions also. As I mentioned before as well, you can ask questions if you have not already on the live chat section, and some of the questions will be picked by our team. Shruti, coming back to the growing digital market, we have also spoken about it in detail in the video that is there on Inside IIM. What sort of different measures you as a company, as a conglomerate, should take? Because every day there is a new business that is being set up. People are using Instagram, people are using Clubhouse, people are using different such metrics to grow their business. For a company like ABG, how difficult or easy it is to set up a new company or a launch? How do you plan that? This is a question, by the way, from Amoli Bhardwaj, Micah.
Thanks, Amoli, for the question. I think, Paul, like you rightly said, and I think that's how the question reads. Today, being part of digital is not a choice anymore. One has to play in that ecosystem. And there are a lot of players who are coming in and causing disruption through digital models. I can give of enough examples in retail, in textiles, where disruptions that one couldn't have imagined earlier are happening today. So it is really about how and when and how fast one chooses to be part of the digital space. Having said that, we cannot go from base to being a completely digital organization in a year. It's a journey one needs to travel. So one needs to carefully evaluate the solutions that are available out there and figure out what can best integrate into the current systems that the company follows. What can give you the best ROI, because digital, by the nature of it today, is CapEx led. So there are heavy investments that go into digital. Also, it's about trial and error. So sometimes solutions that may work for one company do not work for the other. So therefore, one puts in version 1.0, version 2.0, etc. So there's a journey one needs to travel. And therefore, keeping in mind why one is taking a digital solution, what is the objective that digital solution services, and what is the business one gets out of it. So therefore, the ROI measurement, like in any other investment a business would do, becomes very, very critical when one is looking at digital as well. In our case at ABG, one more thing that we look at is how does digital supplement our physical, and how will physical supplement digital in the future? Because the idea is not to have pure play either in digital or physical. The idea is to move to an omni sort of play. So I think that becomes important. The second part of the question, which was around how does one really launch when one is getting into a category where a lot of competition may be there. I think at ABG we follow something which is called the brand compass. Basically, it's a simple framework that one uses to understand who is the competition, who's the competitor, getting a little more insight into the category. So what are some of the levers that are driving this category? But most importantly, understanding what is it that your product is fulfilling that no other product fulfills. So what is the differentiation and the reason to believe you bring in with your product, which no one else in the market is giving today? So unless one is able to articulate that properly and say that only my product. So for example, as a brand manager of Linen Club, when I launch a new product in the market, I have to write down in 2 sentences what only this product will service. So only this product from Linen Club is going to give you this, this, this. And I think if that articulation is clear, then even in a very competitive market, you're going out with an offering that will be able to stand on its own. And of course, the offering has to be solving for a consumer need. So I think having some basic frameworks in place and having some checkboxes really helps.
Absolutely. Shruti, the next question that we have here might come in as something which is a trade secret, and you choose not to answer this, but I will still ask you this question. This question is, I see a lot of your textile products being sold or for less cost on e-commerce sites, right? Is it like you supply them at low cost as they purchase from the company in bulk, or do they bear the discounted amount? Vishy, I'll move to you, from one challenge to the other, the other big challenge during the lockdown and, measures taken from different governments, different state and national governments. Transportation was majorly hit, which plays a major role in the large scale companies like ABG. At such a point, how ABG tackled and how your business tackled, if you can talk about it, with the various situations during the pandemic, and how did it hit the overall productivity, if you could talk a little bit about it. The question, by the way, is from Sahita Shadmaki. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, but yeah, she's from DOMS IIT Delhi. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Sahita. If talking about the transportation sector, which is very close to our business, by the way, and affects more sectors than one, as you rightly pointed out. But if you look at the Google Analytics data for trends over the pandemic time, truck journeys, which are typically indicative of industrial transport, were less affected than car journeys. So people travel. But there were periods of time where inter-regional transport, if you will, was either restricted or even shut down, more so in some markets than others, I think. Getting around it, I think communication was key, and across teams, across businesses, as I think Kritika was mentioning earlier, teams switched online almost immediately. As a business, the focus was on ensuring the supply chain remains unaffected, and to maintain customer confidence was critical. In the case of Birla Carbon, as I would imagine in the case of other businesses as well, there were no major supply issues through the first wave of the pandemic, as far as I can recall. The concern here was more about demand dropping. The real challenge was when demand started recovering and the shipping industry struggled to keep up after having hit the reset button on a global scale. The key learning here was in terms of improving, I think, supply chain flexibility and using our international and multi-location presence to ensure security of supplies. I think those were the key learnings.
Absolutely. Sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, next question, Vishy, straight away to you, from those challenges to opportunities in the future. Aditya Birla Group is present, as you all know, in different segments, in different sectors: cement, metal, clothing, finance, telecom, and whatnot, right? But the future is going towards e-commerce, fintech, OTT, electric vehicles. How is Aditya Birla Group planning to enter these kind of industries, and do you guys have any plan? You can talk about your sector also, in detail as to what are the new cracking things that are upcoming. The question is from Tanish Kanchal from IIT Delhi. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Tanish. I think as a group, we are always on the lookout for new opportunities to grow and expand. There are teams, dedicated teams at both business and corporate level who are constantly scouting for opportunities. And that would include new industries as well. And these sectors that you mentioned, whether you call them core or new, they are not necessarily standalone. They are part of the same larger ecosystem. And you already see to a certain extent that they cross paths into the sectors that we already operate in. For example, in fashion, we are already embracing e-commerce in the form of partnerships with Flipkart. Or take, for instance, these 16 fintech startups that ABC works with to expand the scope and reach of its products. Or the group's content venture, Applause Entertainment, which produces show for OTT platforms. You mentioned electric vehicles. It already affects at least two sectors that I can think of, metals and carbon black. And so for key drivers like rolling resistance or lightweighting, the auto industry looks to suppliers to come up with innovative solutions. And if we see merit, while we work with these new industries in expanding our portfolio to participate in some of those industries, that will definitely be on our radar.
Right. Kritika, talking about these businesses that Vish was also saying, a lot of these businesses ABG is working on currently is acquired businesses, right? And you have been part of one such acquisition as well, where you have actively, worked around it. How do the leaders and contributors ensure parity in culture across these businesses? I am sure you have also, gone through certain experiences. If you can take us through that. This is a question from Shivang Agarwal from IIM Shillong.
Okay, thanks, Shivang. Thanks for the question. So the beauty of the group is that you will always witness a different culture in different businesses, but depending on which industry that particular business belongs to, but what cuts across the group is the values. One thing that you will always find, whether you're sitting in India or in Atlanta, or for that matter, Germany, so probably Vishy can kind of share his experience. One thing that you will find is that the values cut across all kinds of businesses. And on the other side, building a culture doesn't happen overnight, especially in an acquired setup or a merger setup. It's a journey, and it is actually a journey. I mean, we cannot say that we've acquired the unit and now we've set a culture. It takes a long time, and some of our bigger acquisitions that has happened, it takes a while to acclimatize to the group culture. But what is important is that you set the cultural direction very early on. And these are some unspoken work that begins even before the actual acquisition has happened, because you're anyways dealing and you're in interaction with a set of people for the acquired unit. And every conversation you have, every action you have is a reflection of a culture in an organization. So I think even before people are onboarded and they become officially a part of your group, they are already aware in what kind of a setup they are going. And I think it's a very fortunate thing for us as a group. Hands down, I've been a part of two such integrated units, one at a plant in India and one at an international location. And both the places, what I realized was companies were waiting to get acquired. And that's a very positive sign, because they know that they're going in even in bigger, safer hands. And also at the same time, the group is also showing a lot of flexibility to embrace all kind of different culture they're going to bring in with these kind of mergers. Along with that, I think one thing which is very important is also the role that the leaders play. How is it that everyone is made comfortable? How is it that they're helping people create a culture? How is it that we are able to define those cultural champions within the organization? And the work doesn't happen one way. That it is not only about working to ensure that the acquired unit people are comfortable culturally, but it also there's a lot of work that happens internally with the existing set of people as to how are they sensitive to the needs and the change that is happening in the lives of those people. See, it's not easy to get acquired, and this is a big change that happens, and people professionally go through a lot when such changes happen. And the least that they would expect is a good support at workplace. They will be
Right.
interacting with new set of people, and that is the time even your existing employees are sensitized. So I think it is a two-way thing, and probably anything that we do is always a reflection of how the organization has built its culture. And again, one thing that I'll repeat is values do cut across and resonate with everyone.
Right. Kritika, now, let's talk about representation a bit. The Indian MBA space, we have all seen around 30% female managers coming in every year of the batch size that we see usually typically in these schools. The senior leadership and management for most Indian companies have about 17% of women managers, according to Forbes India. Where do you think the gap arises? And as women leaders of tomorrow, can we bridge that gap? And is ABG, committed towards that? It's a question by Bliss Sinha. She's from XLI Jamshedpur. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Bliss, for the question. And I think this is a question when it comes to the increasing the female and the overall diversity in an organization. So let me take a shot at it. I think I would begin by saying how large our funnel is. To my knowledge, about the number of female graduating from an MBA college is between 25 to 30%, right? I mean, if I look at that number itself, the funnel is small for us. So we look at a problem at the funnel stage itself, where firstly the gap arises where the pool for me to hire from is itself small. Now again, when we go ahead, the other aspect being that till the time you reach up to a CXO level, this percentage drops to even further, like a 17% that you quoted. But the idea is to understand where are those fallouts happening. And we did a study internally in our organization. And one of the things we found out is that it is at a different stage of your life that especially women employees are dropping. Whether it is, at a time after taking considerable experience, when there are certain life-changing events that are happening, or probably they're supposed to go to some other different locations in work, etc. Or, and motherhood is one of the aspects. But I think nowadays organizations have evolved a lot in terms of their policies, in terms of the support that they are giving to the, their female employees. For example, to returning mothers, I mean, the flexible work, reduced hours, all of this has become very supportive. For an organization, what is important is how is it that you're able to build that paraphernalia around a woman who's able to come back to work and work productively. And this is not only about a returning mother, it can be at any stage of career. You might face any issue, right? And how is it that you're bringing them back? Because the idea and the rate of fallout for female is way higher even today. I mean, that is the hard fact. It's way higher even today than the men. All our policies are supposed to become friendly towards that. And I think there have been a lot of steps that we have taken, at least from ABG perspective. I can say that there has been no gender scene when it comes to giving opportunity, right? And it is more about striking a right balance. And there will be certain derailers that will happen. But I think that is where the organization steps in. They are humane to understand that these are real issues and genuine issues, and how can we support them? The idea is, and the maximum fallout that you will see is at the mid-management level. Just hold on there. Maybe you might delay a year of your career goal that you have looked at, probably or not a year shorter to achieve that goal. But my suggestion is always hang in there, because if you have that support around you, it will definitely make you work throughout. And that's how I think we will be gradually able to see a better number going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ishan, I'll move to you next. There's a question coming in from concern, and rightly so, because of the kind of times that we are seeing or we have seen in the last year. what sort of paradigm shift do you see in the demand for GenMan roles in case of a COVID-like scenario? We saw that finance and IT roles have a better cushioning during these times. So do you think GenMan roles will be able to provide such safety in the future? The question comes from Jatin Malve, I am Lucknow.
Hi, Jatin. I think this is a very pertinent question, but based on my experience, I think that general management roles are going to stay. That is what I think the entire leadership program is about here, right? I've seen people from HR moving to sales, becoming CXOs, so those type of transitions are very much there in Aditya Birla Group, and I think that's what this entire leadership program is all about. Being a general management kind of doing a general management kind of role really helps you out. You can really cut across functions. You are fungible. You can adapt to different situations. I think that is very important right now when we see such situations arising. So I can tell you by my experience that I've worked in customer service, I've worked in operations, I've worked in marketing, I've worked in strategy, and it was all because that you bring in that element of quickly adopting to those changes and quickly learning things, right? So hence the general management is that category which is going to cut across. But I really also believe that you really need to bring, keep building a depth, So at some point in time in your career, maybe, once you are done with 5-10 years of experience, you start building that depth. So while you have an horizontal experience across functions, you really need to build your depth as well. So that is definitely going to be a key thing right now. The second part to it, when you say that you see a finance and IT roles having much better cushioning, I would say that any and every company which were quick to adopt to these changes, were quick to get into a digital shift, and were quick to understand and crack the customer, needs, right? So all those roles in all those industries were really relevant. So I've seen people going across functions as well. So general management is going to stay. After a certain period of time, you really need to build a depth as well. So I think that's a concluding remark from my side.
Right, Ishan. My next question will be, the kind of world that we are living in. It's a data-driven world. It's better to say that it's a data-driven world, and we're all racing against time to transform into data-driven businesses, right? But to succeed, there is a need to first foster a strong data-driven culture within the company. So, what initiatives has ABG taken to put better business use and extract optimal value for better, faster decision making? This is a So last set of quick questions to all the panelists before we move into live questions. Yes, Ishan. So this is a question coming in from Rahul Gandhi, not maybe the Rahul Gandhi. This Rahul Gandhi is from IIFT Calcutta. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hi, Rahul. Thanks a lot for this question. I think this is a very, very pertinent question right now. Talking from an ABG perspective, I can really say that, the companies which were very much into the B2C space and were dealing with large volume of data sets were already in that space of, having a data-driven strategy. So I think they were already in that space. But to create a better focus around data across the group, so the multiple initiatives were taken. So right now, I think I can confidently say that across groups we would now have a digital and analytics kind of functions being built. At the central level, we have a data analytics cell which has been built. So this has been some years now. The very important aspect on so basically these things really help in building those cultures. We are hiring people from outside as well, who have a good experience of working on data and creating those models. So in the company which I'm working right now, I think we would have not less than 40-50 models with the help of which we are right now trying to understand what are the next best offers you can give it to a customer. How can you enhance the customer journey? How can you predict if the customer is going to stay or going to exit, right? And what is the best that you can really predict out of it? By having said that, I would also say that it is also very important to have insights coming out from a direct, maybe a in-depth interviews, right? So while data speaks a lot, but it's really important that you also get a emotional connect with the customer, understand what exactly is required, because there are a lot of stated, unstated needs which data might not be able to tell you, right? So while data works on the 4 V's, right? So you talk about the volume, you talk about the variety, velocity, city. So I think all those aspects are there, but it has to go hand in hand with the one-on-one conversations with the customers as well.
Right. Shruti, a connected question. We are going to talk about some things that are going to come in future in this set of questions. What kind of challenges do you face in adopting digital practices and artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to manufacturing businesses which you are associated with? Also, are there any challenges you face in adopting digital practices specific to Indian manufacturing as compared to global counterparts in the same industry? A question coming in from Smera Dania from IFT Calcutta. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the question, Smira. I think in terms of India versus global, India traditionally has been more labor intensive as compared to globally. In terms of automation, we've been a step behind our global counterparts. So in terms of the change that is required as one moves to digital, I think that change management is slightly more intensive in our India operations. And that is the challenge I see vis-a-vis our global operations, at least in the textile space that I have been part of. In terms of any specific challenges to adopting digital in manufacturing, again, goes
I think lost connection there from Shruti. We'll move to you, Vishy. Something related to this, a question that is there in the minds of a lot of people. I think with the advancement of technology, collecting and analyzing information about the customers has become more accessible. It has led to marketers relying on AI for the prediction of human behavior. How should a future marketer adapt to this dependency? Are you guys using something similar in your business right now? This is a question coming in from Aditesh Verma from Mica. Yeah, please, Vishy.
Thank you, Aditesh. I think that's an interesting question. I think there is no denying the growing ability of machines to predict human behavior, assuming logic and rationale prevail. And yet you have anomalies like GameStop that remind you that human behavior is difficult to predict, given that it's driven by emotions alongside logic. I think the first step for a future marketer would be to understand the value chain, the impact of future megatrends. This will help you to ask the right questions or identify those markers that AI can then help track. The real challenge lies in how you tap or influence human behavior, touching hearts and minds. If you have access, I would say get comfortable with tools and AI platforms. If you take the case of vehicle autonomy, for example, a technology that is still under debate, there are legal and ethical implications that one needs to consider. Regulatory requirements like data privacy, all of which could represent opportunities for development. I see marketeers and AI working together, not necessarily overlapping. And as far as in our business, we are working with some research companies and partners to look at how we can use AI to enable us to take better decisions.
Absolutely. We will move to a question that has come in a lot of times in the forms that we've floated. Kritika, I'll come to you. The question is around work-life balance. With digital coming in, with the thinning boundaries between personal and professional life, with flattering structures of the companies. How does your role as a leader change, and what are your views on the hustle culture and the ever deteriorating health because of the endless work hours and continual stress? A question coming in from Sanjay Chitre, Mica again.
Thanks, Sanjay. I think very pertinent question, and all the more with the health part that I will address in the second aspect of my answer with the pandemic being around. So firstly, as a leader, it becomes even more critical. You're exposed to the last man standing when you have a flatter structure. What makes it easier is that now your communication is better, your decision making is faster, and as a role of a leader, you have to be very open to talking to everyone and not just the cohort that is around you, because you're cutting the flab, you're cutting all the bureaucracy, and what is more important in a flatter structure is that how is it that you're ideating, thinking, and also making faster decisions. And I think what is the key over here is communication. I believe communication is oxygen when it comes to a flatter structure. It's not if there is a person who's heading strategy, he or she is not only going to talk to the strategy folks within. I mean, how intra-business, intra-functional conversations are happening, those meetings are conducted, I think everything becomes really flat. To give you an example, we had our entire digital lending business, which was like a startup within a a conglomerate ecosystem. But the culture was very different. It was a very kind of a startup culture, but the structure was completely flat, and anybody could walk up to anyone and anybody could ask any kind of questions, whether to the CEO or to the senior management team. And I think the proof of the pudding was in the kind of business we did at the end of the year, because there was so much of openness in the culture, and the flat structure actually helped us talk more seamlessly. Coming to the second part of it, Paul, in terms of the hustle culture being created or how the health is deteriorating, I think that is it. It has become a reality at times. But what I also feel is that there has to be a discipline that an individual can also bring in, right? Like, how is it that you're able to create a discipline around yourself with your routine? But the other thing is, see, the last 1 year has really taught us how health is an important aspect. And what is the group does to ensure that this kind of a thing does not set in when you're working? It is very important to be very sensitive to the needs of the other individual. Yes, there would be times that the business would require, and I think people would not mind when they know that the larger goal that they're achieving is actually going to be very successful. But is this being set off with something else? If today I've spent say, if I've spent an entire day at work or I've worked relentlessly, how is it that my work gets recognized? How is it that, I'm getting a compensation for it in terms of a week off or a compensatory off? I think that is the way the policies evolve. It is not that if your hard work is actually being negated, that is when you feel that, that hustle has taken over you. Secondly, I would rather not put it as a hustle culture. I would rather say that, things have become very competitive out there these days. But the idea is, if you're really sure about your skill, you are really sure about what you're doing is right, I think you will always nail the game. Also, from the health perspective, I think during these times, as an organization, the kind of support that we had extended to employees was remarkable. And I'd like to call this out, especially in the times of COVID. Uh, you know, everybody was going through an unprecedented time where there were health issues. There were people who had lost their dear family members. How is it that the company can come and pitch in and step in and, support the families? This was the time when we had all our hospitals functioning. We had all our group hospitals available for the employees and their families, the ambulance services, and how we had created COVID warriors up till the last man standing. And one thing that generally gets missed out, it's once you've actually lost a family member, what do you do? Cope up with that. So I think the entire cope up mechanism of helping somebody grieve is also something that the organization supported. And I think this has also taught us how do we take care of our mental well-being. So I think a lot of work is happening in that space, and definitely it is very pertinent for organizations to focus on this and focus on the well-being and health of employees, and not really letting that hustle culture come in.
Right, absolutely. Now I will open the house for all the questions that are coming in. Do send in your questions, as I was mentioning again and again. We have a few questions that we have sorted and we want to talk about. Sashwat is asking, what kind of roles can someone with operations and supply chain specialization expect from APGLP across domains within the group? Whoever wants to take it, please go ahead.
Okay, so I can give that a try. So since this is about the roles, see, in terms of operations and supply chain, the kind of roles that it can be seen in two ways. One is on the manufacturing side and one is on the services side. So I think when you look at the manufacturing side, it is more a plant-based role in terms of if you're working on an entire integrated line of, say if it's an Ultratech cement. So how is it that the overall operations of a cement working can be looked at? So the manufacturing setup at an Hindalco or a Novelis, so the logistics and the supply chain for those products, how does it work? Those are the kind of roles that you can go on. Whereas when it comes to say a service industry, say in a financial services, it is more about the operations of a lending business. If there is a loan that has to be processed, how is it that operationally we are able to fund the customer in time and ensure that their EMIs are getting, delivered in time. So all of those are the operational aspects, not only in terms of, ensuring that the money is hitting the account of the customer in time, but also what is the kind of monitoring that is happening when it is the time of your EMIs or disbursals, etc. So I think those are the two different kind of operational roles that you can look at in the group, putting it under manufacturing and services side.
If I can add to that, Kritika.
Yes.
If I can add to that, in manufacturing setup, there is typically a need for managing demand, managing product portfolios, and also looking at how you juice your assets, if I can say that. How do you utilize the lowest cost assets and maximize profitability? So those kind of roles will also come up.
Right, of course. Hitesh is asking the next question. It says that, in the VUCA world that we are in, how would organizations know when to start bringing about a change in their inherent strategies, sorry, my bad, and whether to focus more on the results or the process involved to achieve the results? Yes, again, open question, whoever wants to go.
I'll take a shot at that. I think COVID has taught us that we should stop trying to predict the wave and be better prepared to, surf. The world of uncertainty will continue to remain. Our prediction power increases with time as we learn from our past experiences. But that said, I don't think all kind of scenarios can be predicted. It's important to keep track of the various, drivers in the industry, but as much flexibility that we can provide to the system and make processes leaner and more efficient, faster time to market, that will in fact help us be more efficient in this kind of a situation.
Right. Yeah, sorry, somebody said something. Okay, all right, great. Rhythm Sharma is asking another question, saying that with this ever-changing environment where pandemic has affected the lives of many individuals, how the culture and environment ABG helps them to recover from that and helps you get physically better and mentally better as well. Shoma, if you want to have a dig at it, or Kritika, if you want to go ahead, please.
I don't mind taking that actually, and maybe Kritika can, add to that. Thanks for the question, and thanks, Paul, for taking it up. So I think culture is it's a very hard to define word. I mean, if we go by the literal meaning, it means ideas, customs, and social behaviors, that are acceptable in an organization. ABG being a conglomerate of, multiple organizations, one experiences, culture in a very different way. So I think it's all about, getting into the environment and, exploring this a little bit more once you are, in that particular business. Once you are in the system, you're getting a hands-on exposure to all possibilities, all opportunities. What you experience eventually, kind of brings in the culture, at ABG. And Kritika, maybe you would like to add to this.
Sure, Soma. So taking forward what Soma was saying, I think in terms of if I look at the other leg of it as to how the organization has helped people cope up with these times, I think like I mentioned earlier that, this was a time when we are simply coming at work, interacting with people, probably discussing as to, what exactly is happening with us, etc. But this time had actually given a peek inside the houses of people, individuals. When we were actually online, when we were talking to everybody, we knew that, okay, this individual is managing 2 kids at home, also managing the work and etc. And it was very clear. I mean, we were very open to say that, okay, please bring your dogs or your kids when you're having a meeting, because, both the spouses are having meetings at the same time and they were juggling between things. And I think after this entire 1 year, 1.5 year, what we've realized is people have become more empathetic. I think that was something I have realized over a period of time, probably a change I have seen earlier from an HR perspective. Yes, we do come across various, conversations and issues. We are privy to that. But now it was more about, even if you don't know, it's more about you don't speak, but you see what's happening on the screen and you're able to relate to an individual. I think that is the thing that has changed. And now when we go back to work, people actually ask, okay, how's your dog doing? Okay, was he able to eat that night? I know you were struggling to, feed your child when we were on a call. So I think some of these conversations have tried to make it more personal. Yes, how the group is helping in this is also trying to make individuals, especially at a certain level, you forget that, okay, time needs to be respected, or, there are other things that needs to be done, to take a pause and empathize. That's all. I think that's something has been a learning.
Right, absolutely. The next question coming in from Divya Darshan Dash, saying, as ABG follows sustainable business practices, how is it approaching investments in emerging markets and developing economies like countries in Africa? Whoever wants to go.
I think Vishy would be right for this.
Just unmuting myself. Yeah, thanks for that question. I think talking about sustainability, the principle of sustainability lies at the core of our corporate ethos. It goes beyond looking at regulatory norms and goes to how you can actually create a positive environmental impact. To give you some examples, and this is not necessarily looking at new alternative sources of energy alone, even the core industries as well. Birla Carbon recently launched a product range called Continua, which is a family of sustainable carbonaceous materials derived from the pyrolysis of tires. To give you other examples, Ultratech, for example, is the world's third largest cement company, is a water positive company, which means that it generates more water than it consumes, and is plastic negative. All of the group's manufacturing businesses have taken stretch targets in terms of their carbon footprint and conservation. I know at least 3 businesses that have recently announced their aspiration for net zero emissions by 2050. And while some of these answers still have to be discovered, the approach to sustainability will revolve around the principles of reducing, repurposing, replacing, and research. So that's kind of the 4 pillars that we see going forward. The group also operates on the renewables business. That's also an example of the group's commitment to alternate sources of energy or sustainability. So those are some of the examples that I can think about. Yeah.
Right. We'll take another question from this live session before we move into those questions that you're eagerly waiting for. The questions that will get you to ABG. As we were all discussing, COVID has opened a lot of doors. Also, customers are now present in virtual scenarios. They have more options to choose from. In this kind of a situation, how can companies turn this into an advantage? Again, I would request my team to dig through and let us know who has asked this question. But yeah, anybody who wants to go ahead and take this.
I'll give it a shot first. Yeah. Wish you do add on this for sure. Yeah. So I believe it gave us an immense opportunity there, right? Because now everything was expected digitally. So before pandemic, the expectation of customers were more of physical visits as well. So I'm maybe first talking about the insurance sector, right, where that rapport, that trust has to be built, right? Whenever there was a personal interaction, that building can that then only happen, right? Pandemic gave us that opportunity that those digital platforms were now open, right? So you can do a KYC, video KYC online. You can submit all the forms and applications online. You can see the way it's shown in Amazon, right? You can see how the policy is moving across. The documents are right now being sent, via WhatsApp. So while the options in front of customers have definitely risen, right? It's also a great opportunity for the companies across, I think, and ABG has been harnessing on that, right? That we are also going to get present across that life cycle and, on those. So we call this as LOCTR, basically. So it's a lot of the in between. So list of a creative time and response. So, so it's a very interesting theme on which we work, right? So, and more over on that, so how do we impact the entire customer journey? How can we be present across? And from the zero moment of truth to maybe the first, third, all moment of truth, right? So it's an opportunity for all of us, and I think we are there, and we are actually harnessing this entire ecosystem right now.
Absolutely. Shoma, I'll now move to you. People are waiting for these answers, and we have kept it the special part of the event towards the end, and this is a question coming in from Aishwarya Mittal. Aishwarya is asking, how do you plan on handling the recruitment process in the coming years in terms of online and offline processes? What is the approach the company is planning to take with regards to work from home and office work?
Hey, thanks for the question. I think at this point in time, the approach to physical versus digital should not really be a concern, because last year, Paul, was a year for us where we have completely transformed all our processes digitally. So last year saw a massive transformation, a digital transformation across all businesses, all business processes. In fact, the entire hiring piece that currently the ABG LP program conducts, that's run on completely 100% digital models. And honestly, to go back into that era of that dinosaur era, we would call it now, of carrying 200 pages of printouts to campus and distributing it to students on GDs and assessment forms to assessors, I think we are all way beyond that now. So having said that, the process orientation should really not make a difference. We are still looking for the right fit for our organization even today when we interact with candidates digitally. The work from home versus work from office model, that will keep there will be an evolution around it, and most likely we would all be following the government norms, central state government norms, depending on the situation that COVID takes in. Most of our offices are right now kind of opening up in September. Some have already started way back. So I think the work from home or office model is something which is subject to government regulations. That's one thing. And secondly, I remember there was this one intern from last summer internship batch who had actually, who was actually working on a project that majorly, centered around evaluating what kind of jobs should permanently transform into a work from home model. Like, for example, some of the backend jobs, support systems jobs, IT jobs within ABG could actually move into a permanent work from home model, whereas some of those consumer facing roles could be, either partially field, partially digital, or, permanently a field-based model. So hopefully some, good outcomes can come from those projects, and that will see light in the coming year.
Great. Shoma, specifically in terms of the placements, should the students stick to specific specialization in terms of courses and certification, or try to cover more than one specialization? And also, does having a CV focused on multiple specializations negatively affect the placements? This is a question coming in from Aman Kumar Sharma, if you want to have a take on that.
Thanks, Aman, for the question. I think it's actually a very valid question, which is there on the minds of all B school grads. I remember back in my time, I actually ended up creating some 6-7 variants of the same resume. And some of you who have already been a part of this resume creation process, you would know that, depending on the recruiter coming in on campus, we generally end up making multiple versions of multiple variants of the resume. Having said that, it is important at the same hand to, be able to justify the variants that we are creating. So it's totally okay to have, an interest in more than one domain. That's my personal view. I mean, when I joined IDEA, I was a part of I was a part of sales function, to be honest. And right now, I have transitioned into HR. So there's really no one fitment that, one should keep in mind. Of course, we hire for general management on campuses. So it makes us all the more easier if, someone has a very diverse experience. The important thing over here is, Paul, the candidate must be able to justify, these specializations that one has taken, be it in the form of live projects or could be in the form of some competitions. For example, if I'm interested in HR, I would like to take up more HR projects, live projects, do some HR competitions, try be a campus winner there, and so on and so forth. Maybe lead some of the HR clubs and committees. That's what the clubs and committees are for. So honestly, in anyone's resume, positions of responsibility is something which has a slightly higher focus on for us, because most of the other things, the academics, the background, everybody is an engineer. Most people are engineers. So there's really not a differentiating point. So I think taking up these additional responsibilities would define, how interested you are in a specialization.
Absolutely, and adding to that, Shoma, you mentioned that you also had sort of a switch within the departments. Do you think ABG allows these people to switch from groups to groups? What are the kind of cross-function and cross-domain learnings that can happen for these people learning it? This is a question coming in first, Tamoj Sharma.
Thanks for the question again. I think it's again a very, very relevant question. This is something ABG strives for and lives in its true sense when it comes to the fungibility of roles across businesses. So I think careers have, since my tenure here with YTM, which is the Young Talent Management team, I've actually seen careers transform over the years. People who have started off as maybe a finance expert has now shifted completely from, controllership or accounting kind of roles to more of business management, business operations. So I think this is a definite possibility. We do have certain protocols to the movements, of course. For example, for the group leadership program, the minimum time and role that one needs to spend is 2 years. We believe that that's a good enough time for someone to learn a role, practice the role, and also be able to experiment and then execute the role, effectively in the next year. So we have a minimum time and role criteria, but of course, when one fulfills that, they have all rights to reach out to the central team, or in fact, even their business HR teams, to basically explore their career aspirations, their possibilities for a next role move. This is what talent councils that we have internally are actually for, to understand what would be the next step, or the next career progression for a group leadership participant. So that's something we all truly believe in, and all our panelists today must have also experienced this in some form or the other. If anybody would like to share their thoughts on this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that brings me to a very vital point, which is coming as a question. And also a lot of companies, they talk about candidates being cultural fit, right? What exactly is being cultural fit with respect to ABG? And if you had one piece of advice for all the freshers who might be there in the call, also they're starting their careers, they want to be part of a company like ABG, what would that be? This is a question, by the way, from Dia coming from IFP Calcutta. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the question, Dia. Again, a very valid question. I would like to take the second part first, maybe, because culture, I think we've already spoken on one of the questions earlier. Yes. As I mentioned, every business in ABG, has a different culture. So once you join it, you only get to experience it. However, as an organization, we do have some certain core values that we look for. when we go for recruitments, our core values being passion, seamlessness, integrity, commitment, and speed, which you would also find, at the top page when you open the ABG website. In fact, when you walk through the corridors of our office, also you would see these values being, imbibed, on and off. So it has a very strong. The group overall is a very, very value-driven organization, apart from being, employee-centric and customer-centric. One advice I think which I would like to give to the youngsters is, one must be open to all, opportunities, and one must be open to explore. Often I've seen, Paul, when people join us from campus, there are a lot of comparisons on, who is doing well, whose CTC is higher, who's getting better paid. I think we should get out of that, zone of that mindset of comparing and feeling bad about ourselves, but think positive and look at the brighter side of things. Moving forward is what I would suggest. In fact, I have also seen cases where, when so the first year at ABG is basically, people do 3 stints across 3 different businesses for a period of 4 months each. So after the stint year, basically all the management graduates, they undergo a final role placement. So last year there was a scenario where there was a very interesting role that had come up in manufacturing. The same role was posted for Mumbai, and then there was a similar vacancy in Indore, and also in a plant which was in a very exotic location like Renupur. Coincidentally, the entire batch, ended up applying to the Mumbai location role, which was, very disappointing for us. So I think we should come out of all these biases in terms of, getting into exotic locations, and, we should be open to more exploring new projects, exciting projects, challenging locations, because now is the time, once we all cross that age of, 32, 33, we are all settled in our family, complacent lives. So it's very difficult to transition at that point in time. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult. Right now, we are all young talent, right? So we expect people to be a little bit more open to, all sorts of opportunities and possibilities. Not all experiences can be, good. There will always be a mix of good and bad people you meet, good and bad managers. It's the same as, in your personal life, professional life. It's the same, really.
Absolutely.
So be open is my advice.
And that brings me to a very honest question from one of the students who have registered for this. They're asking, can honestly answering the questions in an interview hurt the chance of a candidate getting selected? And how does an interviewer expect the candidate to react to the question for which he very well knows the candidate would fail to answer? Do you guys also do that? Tell me very honestly, Shoma.
Again, thanks for the question. But to be very honest, Paul, I think we all appreciate honesty and clarity of thought. In the end, you are selling yourself, right? I mean, you have to sell your story. What gets through in an interview is basically you should be able to establish that kind of connect with a recruiter and ensure that, whatever story you are telling them about yourself, the recruiter has a buy-in for that. So make sure that whatever you're saying, truth or lies, it's kind of credible, and people are not able to make out what. I mean, often recruiters are really smart, because when we go to campus, we have a set of assessors who have been doing this job for many years, right? So it's pretty easy to figure out, who is trying to bluff and who's being honest. So I think honesty is really the best policy here. But the bigger picture is, be able to sell your story.
Absolutely. At this point, Shoma, why don't you tell us a little bit about what are the avenues through which students can actually get into ABG? What are the chances that they have during their 2 year at B School? And if you guys are running in certain programs to make this whole transition better from a student to a professional at your company.
Okay, thanks for the question, Paul. I'll speak from 2 perspectives. One is maybe in a pre-pandemic scenario, what all we were doing, and gradually probably we'll move into that model next year. So there are multiple routes to get into ABG, and this might be common for most other organizations as well. One of them is, of course, the ABG scholarship program. I don't think we are doing it this year, but then every year, the top meritorious students from the top B schools have this opportunity to basically apply for Aditya Birla Group scholarship program. And anyone who comes to the final round of the scholarship program basically gets a PPI into the summer internship program. And let's say you end up winning that scholarship, you end up getting it, and you crack the interview, the scholarship interview, which generally happens every year for the top 30-40 students in Mumbai. You get a direct pre-placement offer as well if you win the scholarship to join us. That's one route. The second route is we used to have two competitions earlier. One was the Stratos competition for general management students. It was a strategy competition. The other thing was Head Start, which is again an HR competition which was launched across HR campuses. For the last 2 years, we have put a halt to that, but again, most likely we'll be renewing it next year. The other modes are, of course, through the campus hiring route. There are certain wildcard competitions which we keep conducting from time to time. Last year, there was a competition that happened called WooMe. That was, I think, hosted by you guys only inside IIM.
Yes.
So I think through that, we went to some campuses. 2-3 years back, we went to IIM Indore. And I think in our last season, we went to IFT, Delhi, Kolkata, and also Nasi Monji. So we do keep, visiting campuses, looking for good, high quality talent through even these wildcard competition routes. One of them for this year that's coming up is Avance, which is a completely social media based, online Instagram based competition. We will be launching that shortly next week, Paul. So I think that would be one of the major routes for entry this year, apart from the campus hiring route.
Right. Shoma, one last question to you and all the panelists who are here. Very quick answers from all of you. What is the secret of getting into ABG and making it to the places that you are in? Shoma, please, if you can start. You are on mute, Shoma, if you can.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, I think I've spoken enough and I'll leave it to the people who have actually cracked ABG. Like my secret, I mean, I can speak from my hiring experience. I was a business, management graduate from IIM Indore. So back in my days, my job was basically to, so the most important challenging question that I had to crack was, if we have chosen you for sales, then why do you want to do HR? So I had a hard time convincing my recruiters how I can use my sales skills in, HR. It all comes through convincing, negotiating, managing stakeholders. So that was really, my interview experience. And I would leave it to the other panel members to take this ahead.
What about you, Vishay?
All right. This was a while ago, so I'm going to try and recall what I can. I think play to your strengths, and secondly, I would say as long as you're willing to, bring in your best game to town, I think that's what it takes to tick in the group. Be honest. Going back to the question that somebody asked, Soma, I think staying honest is important. Integrity is one of our core values. But yeah, stay true to yourself and bring your best to work every day. And I think that'll get you to into ABG. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely. What about you?
Okay, I'll go next. Hopefully my video will hold.
Sure, go ahead, Shruti.
I think at ABG we value a balanced sort of experience and exposure. So in your 2 years on campus, do, like Soma was saying, try and build on not just the academic exposure that you get, but also other areas. So what are the extracurriculars that you can be part of? What are the PORs that you can take up while you're on campus? I think that would be essential. Also, because ABG offers so many opportunities, you have to be open to explore. So if you come in with a very fixed mindset of, a particular function or a particular geography, then you're not really making the best use of what ABG can offer. So I think having a very balanced sort of portfolio and also being open to explore, those two things worked at least for me.
Right. What was your secret, Kritika?
Okay. So it's been a while back. For me, when I do remember when I was being hired for ABG, I think this question has come up earlier also. Honesty never, kind of, it will always help you. I mean, it will never harm you. So definitely be honest. More than that, be authentic. There could be times, there could be few things. So I was a fresher. I mean, I didn't have any past experience, and for me, there was no work related experience that I had to explain. But whatever I had done was more about the competitions, the way I had done some live industry projects, or the kind of positions of responsibilities you've held in the past, whether it's in your college or your MBA time, or for that matter, even at school. But what were the kind of qualities that kind of were enhanced for you when you were doing all of these things? I think why I say honesty is a big thing. Like Vishy also said that yes, integrity is one part of it, and recruiters are smart enough to figure out that when you are faffing. So definitely there could be few areas which probably won't have gone well for you at workplace, but how did you bounce back? What is the role you play? Because everybody goes through some kind of failures in a project or at a workplace, but how do you bounce back and kind of come back and deliver? I think those are the things that will be seen then.